All right, thanks for joining. Those people who are actually streaming on YouTube Live and that have the link, that's great. If you don't have it, no big deal. You can obviously get the link because we're going to archive it to YouTube. So anyways, my personal experience teaching, I taught at Argyle quite some time ago, and I know that online pedagogy hasn't changed, the technology certainly has. And so what I learned then can definitely transfer, and it's definitely applicable over here. So this whole session is really intended to kind of inform your practices as we're transitioning really quickly. So more or less, why the session? Switch. Thanks, Donovan. So basically why the session is because the way that you're going to teach in a regular classroom is going to be completely different than an online world. So what you normally provide is going to have to change and undergo some serious modifications. And so you sort of need to know what the impact is on an online learner. The session is kind of going to provide that sort of information and kind of inform you. You're going to definitely have pitfalls. You're going to definitely make mistakes. You're going to learn on the fly. You're going to know what works and what doesn't work. And so in an online world, you will evolve. I mean, when I worked at Argyle, I was kind of thrown to the wolves, and I did have support, and people were there to sort of help me and run ideas. I bounce things off, and so you will grow as a teacher in that respect. So this presentation and why we're doing this YouTube live stream is to really, I guess, take a lot of frustration out and give you at least a little bit of a head start in that respect. Next.
Sorry.
All good. I think you're responding to comments.
All right. Trying to talk to people.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so, in a traditional classroom, listen, we have a tremendous amount of influence over students. And, what we do in a face-to-face world is challenging without a doubt, but it's exceptionally rewarding. The experience in an online environment can also be rewarding as well, too, but it's going to be a very, very different kind of rewarding as well, too, because, I think you're responding to comments now. All right, and I think it's also safe to say that a lot of reviews, in a traditional classroom, listen, we have a tremendous amount. Is anybody actually distance? And what we do in a face-to-face online is challenging corresponding booklets, but it's exceptionally right. So I know that some people, the experience in an online environment can also be rewarding. We're doing facilitating our distance and doing that's what I think you're responding to comments here. And I think it's also safe to say that a lot of so what your traditional classrooms are, we have a tremendous amount. Is anybody actually? It's going to challenge your assumptions. Make no mistake, what you're doing in an online world is exceptionally right. So I know that is going to be the experience online environment can also make an impact, facilitating our distance that you're actually doing. So I think and I think it's also safe to say that a lot of online traditional classrooms are a unique set of circumstances and especially on the fly. It's going to challenge your assumptions around so the challenge that we're having is going to be the experience that you just don't have to make an impact, facilitating our distance. We might be able to develop software to some sites online nutrition classrooms are a unique set of circumstances and especially on the fly. It's going to challenge. I know unfortunately Autodesk might change around so the challenge that we're having is going to be the experience. Or I'm hoping the district then comes around and says, hey, you know what, we're going to give we're going to expand the license, so anybody could use it. At the same time, we can try asking parents to purchase computers, but that's not realistic because guess what? Everybody's feeling the pinch on this, and it's crazy. So why don't we actually use what we have when we can? So if students don't have access to technology, well, guess what? They might have a PS4, they might have a smart TV, they might have an Xbox. And they can actually, if they have a connection to the internet, they can actually access this material, right? So they don't have to do it, going click, 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 one key at a time. But what they can do is they can actually do it on paper and then submit that to the school. That is a possibility. So we have to consider pretty much all different options. Another consideration is in an online distance environment, students do come in for tutorial time. They come in for sessions. They come in for help, and that's huge. Schools are closed. We don't have that option at this time until conditions change into like a normal situation. So if we're working in a classroom, we still have to make a dramatic difference. And what we do now online and what you learn when things do return to normal will actually make a difference in your own conventional practices. So what I'm really doing is I'm actually encouraging you to learn the technology, get out there and do stuff, because then when we go back to face-to-face and regular convention instruction, you'll have so many more tools to work with in your toolbox. The good thing that we got going for us right now is Google Classroom or Docs are there, and most students have used them, and that's fantastic. Because when I was teaching at Argyle back in the day, prehistoric years, at the end of the day, those kids didn't have a lot of technology skills, and they were definitely evolving. So we have that advantage. Next slide, please. So where do you begin? If you haven't already done so, please create a Google Classroom and make sure you invite parents and guardians into your online environment. I can't stress this enough. A large key component of engaging online learners and their families is basically adding that accountability component. Parents provide that. Not all will, but some, hopefully most, will. The more support students have, the greater they'll achieve it. Now, I ran a session on Google Classroom. I know, some of you didn't have an opportunity to do that, but the link that you have here is going to be great. And I will send this presentation out so you can just click on the link rather than putting in UCT. Anyway, so you get the idea, right? So you can click on that, and there's basically short videos on how to set up your Google Classroom. It's free. The district has already doled it out, and I think a lot of other school districts around, the country and outside of the country are using it at the same time. And also, I'm going to encourage you, learn as many technologies as you can in a short period of time. This session I'm going to do is just theoretical. I'm not teaching technology, but at the end of the day, I will send out more resources, and hopefully some other people can send out more resources so you can actually learn and gather from that. But this transition, you becoming comfortable with technology and more technologically savvy is really, really important. Because these are definitely unique and definitely extraordinary circumstances that nobody thought they'd be doing. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the kicker. In absence of face-to-face instruction, our influences are significantly diminished. That was my experience at Argyle. It's important to engage individuals in this new environment so they're not overwhelmed or lost. It's important for us to reach out to them as well too, to make sure that they know somebody's there and can count on them. So the way that we approach students in a virtual environment will definitely dictate their successes. And I'm going to use the word humanize, and I'll use this later on in the presentation, is we need to humanize their learning experience. They're not just basically numbers in a spreadsheet. Sometimes you can lose focus of that, and they can just he didn't do his work, I got to get after him, right? You got to humanize the experience. If they're not handing in work, there's a reason for it. And as well, each learner has unique differences and individual needs. It's going to be abundantly apparent, online, that kid who doesn't have access to technology. And so they definitely need a point of support. And, considering we're going to be going live with online next week after spring, 2 weeks, week and a half after spring break, they need to be up and running, so you have to also be up and running as well too. Next slide, please. That's all good, Thomas. All right, so as I said earlier, communication is key, and we know that some students are self-motivated, independent learners, and they're going to take very easily and seamlessly to this environment. Other students that we've identified at risk may fall through the cracks. This is where communication and intervention is really key in that sense, and getting in touch with students and parents, whether it be through email or whether it be through video conferencing or whether it be making phone calls, individual phone calls. So if we can establish those connections early and see who's not connected to Google Classroom, I encourage you to do so right away, and make the experience as positive as possible. I don't mean to be doom and gloom either. I remember when I was at Argyle, the average for completion of online courses was 50%. 50%. Correspondence was actually even lower. I think it was about 30%. When I was at Argyle, I think we were up to close to 70%. We will unfortunately miss kids. Some of them are going to fall through the cracks, and it's a crappy thing to acknowledge, but it's going to happen, right? We just have to be duly diligent in that respect, so I'm going to really impress upon that as much as I can. If a student's not handing in work, reach out to them. Offer the supports in meaningful ways. I know this is going to require time for you to communicate, and some days I would just have call-out days. We will be working from home. Unfortunately, students and parents are going to know your numbers. If you want to change them afterwards, you might have to, right? Especially for the parent who just, can't get enough of talking with the student as well, too. If you do also reach out in positive ways, people do actually react positively as well to that as well. And here's another thing that's a real kicker too, is if students fall behind in online environments, they will check out early. They will just say, it's insurmountable, I can't do it. Again, reach out to them. Say, listen, let's work on some short-term goals. Work with them if you can to basically get them to hand some stuff in. That's going to be really essential, and that's going to be really, really critical for them to catch up. Because, like I said, I've seen kids check out. At Argyle, I was very fortunate. Again, I could actually, bring in students on a one-on-one basis. I had what I refer to as a breakfast club. I mandated certain students that were at risk come and work with me, and then what we would do is we shoot baskets, play football outside, and I'm like, okay, great, now get to work. And I would show them what they do, right, with a small group. And kids love that. They needed that, right? We don't have that. So, that's another consideration to factor in at the same time. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so the structure of an online lesson is not entirely different from what you would actually do in your classroom. What I really, really suggest that you do is include objectives, but word them in grade level appropriate language. And this is, again, the same whether it's a conventional or whether it's an online classroom. Sometimes less is more as well, too. Don't be wordy. We're going to talk about that in just a bit, too. And also, like anything in our teaching, our practice should be informed of how is this going to help you in the real world. Math teachers, I'm talking to you right now. Make sure that you guys, if they're using a graphing calculator, talk about how that translates into like graphic programs, vector programs with paths and points. So they're entering equations and stuff like that. They just kind of need to know and kind of understand that and sort of see those visual examples. Provide a task with guide instruction, and this can be done many different ways. It can be with written examples, exemplars, a digital whiteboard podcast, which I'm going to send out a little bit later on, using whiteboard podcast. Sorry, OpenBoard is the program. OBS is another piece of software used to teach technology skills. I'm going to be doing a session on that as well too, mostly for setup because it's pretty easy to use. And also use live lessons such as using Google Meets or Zoom. Now I'm going to encourage everybody actually maybe stay away from Google Meets at this point. Google Meets, if you run a session in the class, kids will mute you. They'll kick you out of your own session. Zoom is actually a better platform to do those conferencing, and the reason being is because they actually do it from their smartphone, right? So they can, so that'll make a huge impact. I'm going to ask Jason, who ran a sessions on science, to maybe put something together, and I can help him put something together as well too. So Jason Brown, if you're listening, please, get in touch with me on that respect. Give students an assignment which they can demonstrate learning multiple ways, right? So, they might, if you're teaching second languages, to basically record what they're doing. If they're taking music, then of course they can video themselves. Here's a cool thing is they can go to the dollar store and they get these little flexible tripod things that hold smartphones, and they can record themselves, and then they can upload that to their teacher to mark. I know that CTS, we're very rich and skill-based, and so we're still dealing with what's going to happen is Alberta Ed going to officially end practical requirements from some of the courses, and if so, to what scope? So that's another part as well too. Students can also, video some of their processes. They can make food, and parents can actually then evaluate it, and then you can maybe get a picture of it, and then you can actually base it on presentation. So there's lots of different ways of doing CTS in that respect. Now, when you give an assignment, give them enough time to work on it, but you got to be firm on due dates. Right, because due dates are one of those things that if they don't have stuff in, and if your policy is like, don't worry, hand it to the end of the year, they won't. Right, so be diligent in that respect. Also, provide your feedback in a very timely and specific way with your targeted comments. Early feedback with detailed comments can really, really guide students. And in lack of face-to-face interaction, that will require a little bit more time. But your online day is going to be posting stuff online, marking stuff, communicating. So you're not standing up necessarily and teaching unless you're doing live stuff. Next slide, please. All right, so again, I talked about the less is more approach previously. And so if you take what you have existing and just throw it up on Google Classroom, students might become overwhelmed, without a doubt. Remember, most students are new to this environment, and they will shut down, as overload will be a huge factor. So be as concise as possible. Also, limit the number of resources towards an activity, if at all possible. So for example, if you're like an English or social studies teacher and you're doing like a critical or analytical response, it's best to start with just one activity that talks about writing the introductory paragraph and break that down. And then you might do another lesson with supporting arguments. Same thing with as well too. Start with simple math concepts or formulas and give an opportunity to practice before you kind of build and scaffold on and stuff like that. I know textbooks do this naturally and stuff like that, but it's really important to I guess disseminate that information separately and let them get the hang of it right off the bat. Next slide, please. Okay, adding exemplars, especially for writing or even some CTS work, this is pretty important. If you can have exemplars of what constitutes excellent work, Students have a reference to work with. I know we already do this naturally, but this is also important in an online world. Limit the number of exemplars and pick them specifically as well too. 1 or 2, should suffice. If you have 5 different writing examples up there, students can yeah, no, click the X and just get out of there altogether. Exemplars also can demonstrate to what students can strive for in terms of what constitutes great work, but be aware, of course, as you know as teachers, not everybody's going to be able to, raise, their level to that standard, but at least it can raise their own bar. Next slide, please. Okay, marking criteria is essential. We know that students already expect marking guidelines and rubrics and stuff like that, no different than an online environment. Include it. Google Classroom does have some great tools for assessment with quizzes as well as rubrics in there. I know in the past, Natasha Allen ran a session with evaluation. She's also helped me out yesterday with the Google Classroom and talking about that assessment piece in there as well too. Use it. Like I said, students come to expect it. If they don't have it, it's a little bit tougher for them to figure out what you want on that sort of moving target. Just make the target stationary. Next slide, please. And I do apologize if I'm talking pretty fast. Am I going too fast here? Audience? No? You're good? Okay, great. Okay, learning theory. Obviously, some of the major learning theories that you came across in university were behaviorism, cognitivism, and constructivism. Now, I included a link below, and my master's in instructional technology really looked at learning theory and how to incorporate into an online environment. The document that I've included through the link is definitely well worth a read, or at the very least a skim. Every learning theory is going to have its practical application. Vary it. Don't depend on one over the other. But I will focus on constructivism because it's extremely valuable, not only in the conventional classroom, but also in the virtual world as well too. So like I said, yeah, you can just kind of go through that on your own. Next slide, please. Okay, constructivism. So like I said, it's worthy. No, it's a powerful learning theory. Here are some basics. Make what you try doing as a real world application. It's clear, it's demonstrable, it's transferable. Allow multiple perspectives of social experience from others in collaboration. Hey, Google Docs. I'm not a big fan of Google Docs, except for one thing they do better than anything else: sharing and collaborating. If any platform's got more tools in that respect, Google does, for sure. And so, you know what? Encourage kids to work in groups. They can't work in isolation, and they shouldn't. And so you might want to encourage them to reach out to a classmate to do like a project as well too. Also, provide the learner with choice. If students have more choice, they think they got more control. And if they have choice, they can actually select something that they actually can get engaged in as well too. And that's important. But of course, they have to have some prior knowledge that's been scaffolded in some sort of way. Encourage voice and ownership. As teachers, we try doing that every day. Just keep that in mind. Don't lose sight of that in an online world. Allow learners to demonstrate things orally, visually, audio, kinesthetically, or even by written work, of course. Hey, our students, our kids this generation are the largest consumers of technology, and they know their way around a smartphone, and they can, sure as heck, use apps, and they can sure as heck, video and capture things to social media. They can easily do stuff to demonstrate their learning as well by photographing or videotaping. And I think they'd probably, enjoy that more than just writing stuff too. Encourage self-awareness and self-reflection as an active person. That might be saying, hey, go check out the rubric. Do you think you meant this? That might be like, what do you think your quality of writing? Maybe give them some self-assessments as well too. I find with self-assessments, students can be brutally honest about their own work and how they've performed. Not all these need to be used at once. They can be used in combination, or they can just be used independently of each other as well too. But just keep that in the back burner. In an online environment, you will forget these things. Next slide, please. Forums and discussion groups. I'm kind of torn on this one. My experience at Argyle with forums and discussions was kind of mixed. There was some good stuff happening, and there was a whole lot of bad stuff happening as well too. So you can use Pro Boards. It's a free forum that you can set up, and you can get students on there. But it's like your classroom. If you don't manage it, it's going to get out of hand real quick as well too. Now the question is, are you going to have time to manage it, right? So you got to sort of figure that out on your own. Some of the rich discussions can definitely happen there with specific classes. You know what? If you've taken an online course though post-secondary, master's, whatever, doctoral, you will know that sometimes it turns into writing essays upon essays upon essays, and people really kind of get caught up in the minutia of all that stuff and trying to present. Just encourage students just get their ideas in there and just be respectful and mindful of each other. Next slide, please. All right, so we know this transition is not going to be easier, but you know what? Our learning communities are going to grow. Support each other, share your resources, see what somebody else is doing. The phone list is going out within the school. Contact somebody if you need something. I don't think there's anybody who would actually would want to hoard resources, or they shouldn't anyways. And with that, I know that the staff here are extremely awesome. So support each other's work as well too. Even if you're feeling like you're having a crappy day, call a friend. See how they're doing. And just the sniffling, just by the way, is allergies. So I promise you I'm not sick. I should have done that. Okay, so we're going to make mistakes, we're going to evolve, but we're going to also learn. And it's going to inform our pedagogical practices as well in a conventional sense. So this is the end of the presentation. You know what, I did ask Donovan to just type, to hold the questions until the end of the presentation. So some of you might want to check out now, that's totally okay. Some of you might want to ask questions and stick around for that part. I do have a live audience here as well too, and so we go back and forth, between them. So, first question, or any question. Senor Vargas.
Yes, for example, for your presentation now, what kind of technology are you using?
Okay.
There's a PowerPoint presentation there, there's your voice.
Yeah.
So what are we using here?
Well, what's going to happen is if you, on Monday late afternoon when I sent out the email, all the sessions I'm going to run, one of them was Open Board. That's your digital whiteboard. Great program. You can hit a record button. You've got a microphone. You can easily save it and just post it up to YouTube super fast. And it's easy. Then you can just grab that link and put it into Google Classroom. Obviously, you attended the session of Google Classroom for a bit, and then obviously that's going to be your main delivery vehicle. There's Zoom for conferencing and live instruction as well too. You're going to use that, of course. Something else as well too, like myself or Donovan, Marlene, Janice. We're going to be using open broadcast software. In doing that, that's going to be really important for capturing a lot of what we're doing. And I know some other teachers will also use OBS as well too. They might have to say, hey, this is how you basically, I'm going to create a video on how you can actually upload a file to your Google Classroom on the assignment, right? They will share that with the students. And so these are main programs that they're going to be using without a doubt.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Paul, you had a question.
For support staff, when we want to be supporting teachers doing the online call or doing whatever online call, so calling students that are at risk, how will we reach out to let teachers know that I'm available? Is that more of a
yeah, I think it's more of an admin decision. They're gonna organize you and tell you how you can actually support.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't speak for anybody in that respect. Yeah. If you want to help me, you can come over and clean my house. I get to do that at my house.
I have my own house cleaner.
Do you really?
Yeah.
My wife has me as the house cleaner.
That's a good job.
Sorry, I was going to ask, do you find it works better to post those daily lessons, or is posting weekly things of on a Monday, this is what you should have done by Friday kind of thing? What do you find works better?
You can post individual assignments, or you can actually have projects with later due dates with more time to work on. You're going to be utilizing both, just like in the classroom in that respect. Yeah, for sure. You need to communicate that as well too.
It depends on the class.
And if you send announcements on Google Classroom, don't go crazy with a really long email. You got to bullet point, concise it, right? Because like I said, they're going to be super stressed.
We have one here from online. This is actually awesome, but I'm such a nerd. This is so good. But Emma's asking if you're going to teach us how to use how to open a YouTube channel and kind of get things set up when you do your open board session.
Absolutely, that's going to be part of the session too.
Okay.
That's for me.
Yeah.
All the teaching stuff, we're all teachers. We can probably figure out what assignments we need.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be doing this in isolation. We shouldn't be reinventing the wheel. Let's come together as a group.
It's the technology that's the struggle.
And absolutely. And in my experiences, elementary teachers are scared of technology. High school teachers are a little bit more open to it, but there's some that kind of resist it as well too, right? You gotta just go with the flow right now, without a doubt.
I don't think there's resistance to the technology, it's just not knowing how to.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, though some will have resistance. Some people just don't like change, right? So that's a whole kind of like
Yeah, I don't
diffusion
think
of
that's-
cultural change and stuff like that.
I don't think that's the situation here. I think we just need
Yeah.
to know how to get that little camera thing operating. If we don't have that thing you're holding in your hand, how are we gonna, like, it's the simple how-to.
Well, the good thing is,
Like I could
Chromebooks.
talk about curling, but I could then, I need to teach you how.
That's
And
right.
it's the
Are
technology.
you going
that
to teach
I
me how to?
think is
Are you going to teach me how to
Yes.
curl?
Am I right?
Yeah.
How to put it on. That's what we need.
Yeah, that's fine. That's in a rollout too. You know, without a doubt. Just so you know that there might be a protocol for you to sign out technology because I know some of you might not have it. The cool thing is if you do have a Chromebook, it does have a mic built in as well as a cam into it, and so you know there's your hardware requirements met right there. And then if you have everything uploaded to Google Drive, you know all your files and stuff like that, and that's ready to go, then you know you're going to be good in that respect. If you have a notebook, you know, unless your laptop is like 10 plus years old, it's not going to have a webcam. Yes, it's built in too, for sure.
I think your less is more comment is also so true. Like your phone is a huge asset. It's something we haven't had access to in a number of years,
Yeah.
but now it's
Yeah.
so like this. This is what I teach my kids. This setup. Most of you can't see it, but this is what we do with broadcasting. So we're using different software, more mics, like double cameras, but all that's for like redundancy and double checking. Like I'm projecting this slideshow that you can see in the room from my computer to a different computer over the network to live stream it to the people that are online. So that's nothing you would even want to contemplate doing
Yeah.
at home, right? Like that. Don't look at my setup and think that that's something you need to do in order to create online content, right? Your simple smartphone on selfie mode is more than capable of communicating what ideas you need to
You don't need a
communicate.
big production, and you know, big shout out for Donovan for setting this out as well too. The reason why he structured this the way that he did is to make it accessible for everybody, interactive as much as possible, and as well too, just easy to follow along. Now, with that said, he's going to archive this video presentation, and we're going to provide the link, which is, you know, is going to be obviously uploaded to YouTube. I'm also going to just send out the presentation as well too. So for those who don't want to follow along and they just can get through things a lot faster, you know, this presentation is going to go out. I'm also going to encourage you as well too. I'm going to, you know, share this on Facebook so parents can forward it to other teachers. You know, please do the same, right? I'm not a hoarder here with information. Any other questions? All right, that's it. Anyways, thanks for coming in and thanks for tuning in. Take care. Good luck.
Online is like a minute behind you, so I'll just
Yeah,
wait.
I try to call them
Oh, damn.
every day or every 2 days just to.
Don't swear.
Rob, are you having another session on anything else today and tomorrow?
No, so